With ever-increasing intensity, people who have been coming to me with relationship problems have been apathetic to doing the very things that would improve the relationship. And a pattern is emerging, a pattern of effort itself being a trigger. And so in today's episode, we're going to take a look at this specific trigger, as well as what to do about it. In a world that is so complicated, in a world that seems to be getting harder and harder and harder, wanting a relationship that is easy rather than hard makes total sense. Even though it makes total sense, relationships involve varying degrees of difficulty because they are not only where our relational needs are met, they are also the primary impetus for personal development, and they take work to build and work to maintain. The right attitude to have is that a language won't speak itself and keep itself fluent. A campfire won't light itself and keep itself lit. A home doesn't build itself and stay maintained. A garden doesn't plant itself. A tapestry won't weave itself. You get the point, right? A relationship takes work to build and make good and maintain. In a relationship, you're taking two unique and very complex individual beings with their own thoughts, feelings, wants, needs, preferences, traumas, weaknesses, strengths, perspectives, past experiences, motives, and you are attempting to merge or unite them in a harmonious way. A relationship is never a static state of happiness. It is always a dynamic, active, never-ending process. Kind of like a dance, a process that just so happens to require constant maintenance and adaptation. Healthy relationship work can be hard as hell, but what sets it apart is that it builds safety. It builds trust. It builds connection. It deepens the bond and it develops the self. Unhealthy relationship work doesn't build these things despite the effort put in, and the motives behind the effort will also be out of alignment. Things like obligation, maybe terror of abandonment, adhering to very strict doctrines, very common in religious communities, pure avoidance of consequences, intermittent reinforcement, maybe the need to fix the other person to feel worthy, maybe believing you're never going to find better, maybe guilt. It's a long list. Unhealthy relationship work breeds resentment. All this being said, some people are triggered by the notion of having to put effort into a relationship. Period. End. When they reach that moment where the relationship becomes challenging, and they see that in order to make the relationship good, they have to change something about themselves, something like their behavior, or to do something that needs to be done, or to put in mental effort, such as really put energy into understanding the other person or actively communicating, they feel immediate resistance and sink into apathy instead. In order to understand what is occurring when this happens, we need to take a journey, like usual, back into the past. If you're one of these people who is triggered by the idea or experience of relationship work, you have learned to associate effort in a relationship with negative things rather than positive things. Therefore, as a path to relational pain rather than relationship improvement and connection. The thing to become crystal clear about is what specifically you associate effort in a relationship with. I'm going to give you an example. Ben shuts down the minute that it becomes clear that in order to make his marriage good, he needs to hold himself accountable to the things he promises. He is apathetic about keeping his word. The idea of having to put effort into holding himself to a standard and always making sure that he's always keeping his word feels intolerable to him. He goes to men's groups. He knows how unacceptable it is for any man to say, "I don't want to hold myself accountable or keep my word with my wife." The other men would hand that man his ass and never let him around their daughters or sisters or mothers or anything. Ben becomes introspective about what is so intolerable about putting his effort into his marriage. What he quickly puts together is that it feels the same way as it used to feel when he was living at home with his hypercritical mother, who expected him to be and do exactly what she wanted, and to the exact standard she wanted in order for her to not be at odds with him. He molded and contorted himself into whatever she wanted him to be, but was never actually able to meet her standards. So, when he is faced with having to put effort into his marriage to actually make it work, he immediately associates doing this with the loss of autonomy, with the horror of subjugation. He associates it with being a dancing monkey, in order to emotionally be safe and to get love. And he also associates it with the unsafety and pain of never being able to just be the way he is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, without the risk of rejection and abandonment. So the first step is to look at your life, to really define the association that you have with putting effort into a relationship. Name the thing you're afraid of and are wanting to avoid. Moving through this trigger is not about trying harder. It's about uncoupling the effort from the threat. The first thing that can be done about this is trauma healing work. This is work with the trigger and what in the past the trigger is linked to directly. My method for this is the completion process. You can learn how to do this process by doing my completion process e-course and also by reading the book, both of which are on my website. The next thing to do is to really look at what work you need to do to make the relationship better and compare it consciously to those things you negatively associate with effort in a relationship to see if doing that work really does or does not equal those things. For example, Ben knows that holding himself accountable to the things he promises and making sure to keep his word equals loss of autonomy, the horror of subjugation, the feeling of always failing, being a dancing monkey in order to feel emotionally safe and get love. And like we discussed, this unsafety and pain of never being able to just be the way he is without the risk of rejection and abandonment. But the question is, does keeping himself accountable to the things that he promises actually equal a loss of autonomy, or any one of the other things on that list? Does making sure that he keeps his word equal being a dancing monkey in the relationship, or any of the other things on that list? Now, the answer might be yes. And if this is the case, then what needs to be done is that this needs to be creatively troubleshot so that the answer isn't yes. But usually the answer will in fact be no. If the answer was yes, you have the real problem targeted, so you can then do something about that in the relationship. But if the answer is no, this realization is going to de-escalate your nervous system and go a long way toward decoupling that relationship between effort and threat. The next thing that needs to be done is very consciously and deliberately looking directly at the things you're actually wanting to avoid in the relationship, the things that are a no for you. Evaluating if and where you feel these things in the relationship currently, and problem-solving those areas so that you no longer feel that way. The things that are a no for you will be those things that you associate with effort. So, using our example of Ben, loss of autonomy, horror of subjugation, the feeling of always failing, being a dancing monkey to get safety in the relationship and get love, and that unsafety and pain of never being able to just be the way that he is without this risk of rejection, and ultimately the risk of abandonment. He may look at these things and realize that he has a very dysfunctional relationship with expectations. He may consciously evaluate expectations within the context of relationships, and he may land on the truth that it isn't okay to require his partner to have no expectations of him. He may then sit down and decide upon maybe what expectations he thinks are fair and that a woman should have of the man in her life. He would communicate with her directly and even debate so as to get on the same page about the fair versus unfair expectations in their relationship. And he may decide to go to therapy to work on his issue with things being expected of him by other people. This is a process that must be done very, very consciously, because it is not okay in a relationship to play a zero-sum game. What that means in this context of what we're talking about today is to put the other person in pain just so that you don't have to be in pain and can avoid these things. An example of what that might be like is, let's say that Ben realizes that he does not want to have this feeling that he is never able to just be the way that he is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, without the risk of rejection and abandonment. He realizes that he wants his partner to stay committed to him unconditionally. So, he drops holding himself to any standard in the relationship with her and starts doing things like not working on his toxic behaviors because it's just the way that he is. Maybe purposefully acting out by doing things he knows that she doesn't like in order to test whether she's going to stay loving, and creating an environment where his partner cannot share how she feels about him in the relationship, because if she does, she's rejecting him and doesn't love him for who he really is. Ben's desire for radical acceptance and commitment, no matter what, has now in this scenario become a license to act with no self-regulation and to behave narcissistically in the relationship. He's treating his desire for no risk of rejection as a hall pass to stop doing the work to make a relationship good. And because of it, in the name of wanting to be unconditionally loved, he has created an abusive relationship. He's created unilateral terms for the relationship. He's made the relationship entirely about his need for safety, leaving no room whatsoever for his partner's need for him to caretake her well-being, for boundaries, or for respect. Aside from those most important things, here are some other things that you can do if you've got this problem with effort in relationships. 1. Redefine the work as something that you see as positive. For example, creation, transformation, nurturing, maintaining, cultivating, mastering, synthesizing, calibrating, alchemizing, exalting, experimenting, adventuring, evolving, etc. Whatever feels the best to you. For many people, work has a negative connotation. For example, maybe stress, maybe exhaustion, drudgery, dread, so much effort, unfairness, exploitation, something being too hard. So redefine it so it doesn't feel like lifting something so heavy you don't want to lift it, or like a chore. 2. See how the effort advances you and makes you gain more. Shift the goal of the effort to something self-serving rather than detrimental to yourself, or rather than something for the other person. For example, say that in order to make the relationship better, you know that you have to go see a counselor. Well, rather than the goal being to fix the relationship or to make her or him happy, make the effort of therapy for the goal of me learning tools that I currently don't know, which will make this relationship and all relationships in general less painful and more peaceful. It's tempting for people to relate to relationship work like a limitation, a burden, or maybe even a tax they have to pay just to keep the relationship, as if they are working just to stay in the same place. Well, this is a way to burn out in a relationship and absolutely resent putting an effort to a relationship. To give you an example, let's say that the other person is nagging you to do something. You know you need to put the effort in of doing that thing to make the relationship good. Well, putting in the effort to understand the why behind the nagging will reveal to you that the person has an unmet need. Something like, I feel like I'm alone carrying all the pressure. What I need, therefore, is a teammate, so I feel like we are in this together. Well, if you put your effort into doing things that make them feel like you are really in it with them and carrying the weight, the nagging's going to stop and you will gain peace, harmony, and closeness. The other person might respond to this with more warmth, affection, and even playfulness. So guess what? You gain these things too. Rather than seeing it like you are complying to a demand at loss to yourself, see that you are gaining all of these things as well as a better version of yourself. A version of you that is a stellar teammate. Make it about what you personally gain. 3. Wake yourself up to where you are. The reality of the here and now versus the past. This bridges the gap between your emotional age, which feels like you're little and trapped, and your chronological age, which is actually not small and not trapped, and is instead very capable and free. Being triggered by putting effort into a relationship so often has to do with your experiences as a child. It's as if you are stuck there regardless of having turned into an adult and regardless of current circumstances being different. When you are triggered, your brain is essentially time-traveled back to a moment where you had no agency, and you are re-experiencing that despite being in a different situation in the here and now. You can think of it like a form of post-traumatic stress reaction. Don't make the mistake of thinking that because it is a fact that you're an adult, you shouldn't be feeling like you do. Your childhood primed you for your life, but you can actually help this situation a lot by snapping yourself out of it, by remembering that you're an adult now, and you have different people around you, and you cannot be controlled like you were controlled as a child. You can leave. Your effort is your choice. The people around you are not your parents. You are not a prisoner. You are voluntarily in the relationship. A request from a partner is not the same as a demand from a parent. It's just information about their needs, which is like having a roadmap for how to build a harmonious relationship with that person, not a rule book for how you must behave, or else. Conflict is not an exit sign, it's an invitation to engage as an adult. Really remind yourself that what is going on is going on. For example, I'm 30 years old, I'm living in Milwaukee, I'm working at a company with a boss that has an intense personality. I can quit this job, even if I have to face things like not having a paycheck. I'm actually able to quit the job. I'm staying because this job will add to my resume, and it puts money on the table. My boss is not my dad. Wanting approval from my boss does not make me feel masculine. I really want to feel like a strong person and like a man because I am one. I'm not a little boy anymore. I'm actually safe in life in general still if my boss doesn't approve of me. Anything that snaps you into now versus them. 4. Commit to small doses of effort in relationships and work your way up. If you're triggered by putting effort into a relationship, you need to rehab yourself relative to putting effort in. One way to do this is to prove to yourself that putting a relational effort in doesn't equal re-injury, things like pain, control, or exhaustion. This is best done by starting with small, intentional doses and then expanding your effort from there. Shrinking the effort in this way, what it does is it decreases the perceived size of the threat. So you can engage with effort in a relationship in a way that doesn't put you in fight or flight mode. For example, you could set a timer to go off at specific intervals, and when it goes off, you could ask yourself, what is the one thing I could do right now to make the other person feel good, or to make our relationship even better? And then, carry that one thing out to completion. The thing you choose could be as small as giving a compliment, or as big as following through on a huge project that you know that they have been desperate for you to do, or anything in between. Some people really need to rehabilitate themselves with doing only very little things at first, so as to prove to themselves that it is positive rather than a threat. And when they are ready to take on things that used to feel big, and that used to feel like something they had resistance towards. Or you could create a 1-week challenge for yourself, where every day you pick only one thing to put effort into that would improve the relationship. When you microdose effort in this way, you need to really notice and resource the positive things that this leads to. The improvement in the emotional tone, the changes in the other person, the reciprocity that may show up, the softening in others, the increased sensation of harmony, how much easier your life gets, the reduction in resistance and tension that you feel, maybe even the pride that you feel of being the way that you are being in the relationship right now. The way the other person starts to bid for connection with you. Take note, by the way, that a positive reaction may not immediately happen, because you may have taught the other person that you will not put in effort, that doing so is a problem for you. So they've had to swallow that painful reality and now, most likely, have a protective wall built between them and you. They may be so burnt out that they can't react. They may be waiting for the other shoe to drop, as if the dose of effort is going to come with a side dish of pain. Or there may be a kind of a lag time before their nervous system can actually believe that this is the new you. When your effort is having an impact in a positive way in a relationship, perhaps the best way to tell is that bids are going to start to increase from the other person in the relationship. That is, they're going to start to display little ways to try to make connection. Try to get your attention, maybe affection, even affirmation. Remember that you are not doing this small dose of effort routine so that you have an excuse to put breadcrumbs of effort into a relationship and expect it not to starve. You are not doing this so that these small bits of effort are performances to keep the other person off your case or quiet. You are not doing this so that you have checked the box and now you're off the hook for the rest of the day. You're not doing this to set a boundary against the other person regarding what they need from you. You are doing this to train your nervous system that it is good to put in effort and that doing so leads to good things, not a recipe for complete and total disaster. And no matter what is, you are in integrity within the relationship. This is something to notice and really feel as well. It's important to mention that all of these suggestions are about being triggered by effort in a relationship, and so you're not actually putting in the work necessary to have a good relationship. It is actually possible to be triggered by effort, because the trigger is a warning that you are the only one putting effort and work into a relationship, and probably have been the only one for a very long time. When this is the case, what you are calling a trigger is likely to be in the realm of resentment, and to be a protective protest, an attempt to preserve your energy, your self-respect, and yes, even your dignity. This means you are overworking and overfunctioning in a relationship, trying to dance a tango with a partner who will not take responsibility for dancing. You are trying to do the work for the other person, which, by the way, is not actually possible in a relationship, which is why your efforts are leading to burnout. If you don't want to put effort into a relationship, you are not invested in relationship. A relationship requires two active participants to function. There is no way to opt out of this and be in a relationship, any more than it is possible to dance a tango and not really put effort into mastering dance yourself. You may have to consider whether it is actually an act of self-awareness and integrity to choose to not be in a relationship because you truly don't want to put in the work of having a relationship. But if you truly do want a relationship and you're triggered by effort, you aren't doomed. It's all about decoupling effort from threat and proving to yourself that instead, effort in a relationship leads to good things. Have a good week.